over how to create an advanced composite image from 2 or more photographs. In this case, we have our model here in the background, and then we're creating the illusion that her dress is becoming a pond in which these 2 duck butts are happily enjoying their afternoon. So we're going to start with this image here, our background image. So you can see I've created quite a few changes in order to, end up at this final composite. So first of all, I'm going to start with the Camera Raw filter. So under the filter menu, go down to Camera Raw, and this allows you to make basic edits like adjustment layers. So for example, like the exposure, probably we need to bring down the highlights a little bit. The whites are a little intense in this exposure here. If we increase the shadows, then we can increase the contrast a little bit. And then we can play with the tint. Maybe we want it to be more of like a sunny day or more purple. Dehaze can help fill in the shadows or make it look like, you have more of a hazy day. Increase the vibrance a little bit. So you just have to balance your values until you get it to a point that you like. To make the edges a little bit darker with a vignette here. So I could keep going, but I think that's probably good enough for now. Maybe adjust some of these values a little bit. The color curves. Okay, so that one's kind of dreamy looking now, so you can see the difference that we've made just with our Camera Raw filter. I'm going to make a copy of the background layer. I might adjust the cropping a little bit because I notice these lines are not parallel with the edge and it kind of looks like it's leaning to one side. So I might rotate it just a tad. That might be too much because we do want a lot of room down here at the bottom of my scene. Okay, something like that. You can also use the arrow keys to make minor adjustments in the placement. So that looks a little bit better. Now we're going to be creating our pond. So I'm going to go up to File, Place Embedded, and I'm going to find my pond picture, which is right here. I'm going to make it fit my page. And I'm not going to see the background, so what I might want to do is lower the opacity a little bit so I can see where it's overlapping her dress. Make it big enough. There we go, so that her dress kind of overlaps over here on this side and on that side. Okay, so now I'm just going to reveal my pond again, increase the opacity. And now I want to add a layer mask because I want to change this non-destructively. So if I add a layer mask, now wherever I paint or add black, it's going to hide. So if I get my brush tool, you can kind of see what that does. So you can hide parts of that layer by painting in black on the mask, or if you switch to white, you can reveal that layer again. So it's a non-destructive way to erase. So I never, ever, ever use the eraser tool. I always, always, always use a mask with the brush tool because it's non-destructive. So here we go. And, up here it might be okay for my brush to be pretty opaque. I might want the land to kind of run into this wall here. But then as I get down into the water, I might want my brush to be a little bit less intense. So I have to click like I mean it. I have to click and click and click and click to get it to erase all the way. So I do want this to be opaque up here. I don't want to see that outline. So again, I might turn up my brush's opacity to get rid of that line there. But then everything else I might want to start being a little bit lighter, not so heavy-handed. So this is still the dress. So I might put those back. So I'm going to switch to white and maybe paint the water back in. So I have both the lines and the ripples from the water to look a little bit more realistic with the way that her dress is falling. And this wouldn't make sense for the rocks to be over the top of the dress. So we have the dress over the top of the rocks. And then if it's starting to reflecting the wrong color, if it's starting to reflect the wrong color, like in here, I might even create a separate layer and paint with the color that I want. So I kind of like maybe this darker blue in here. I'm going to take the eyedropper tool, select that blue, lower the opacity down to 40, and then just kind of paint that in so that my pond and my dress are a little bit closer in color. And the highlights aren't quite so different from the shadows. There we go, something like that. Oh, kind of like some highlights. Okay, and then again, I could even add a blending mode onto this. So instead of it being normal, it might darken where it overlaps, it might lighten where it overlaps. Let's see what that looks like. That makes it even more of a highlight. It's not actually too bad. Maybe overlay. That looks better. So it kind of picks up on the highlight and the shadow and increases contrast between the two of them. So now it's a pretty seamless blend between where the pond is and where my the dress is. And that looks like, which layer is that on? This is probably on the dress itself. Yeah, so that's just part of the image. If I didn't like that, I could use a clone stamp on my background copy here. So grabbing the clone stamp, this is how you do minor little edits like this, borrow pixels from one part of your composition and paint with them in another. So that's pretty seamless now of a transition. And now we just need to add our duck butts. So up to File, Place Embedded, and then we can select our image from our computer. Now it's going to place wherever I have my cursor, so I want to probably drag those up at the top. And then I have to place them. Now I can't really see where I am, so I'm going to lower the opacity. And I kind of want them like right here. Maybe I want them a little bit smaller so it's more believable. Command T to resize, hold Shift to constrain the proportions. And there's my little duck butts. I'm going to make them in the foreground, and then I need to add a mask. So I'm going to turn up the opacity again so I can see what I'm doing. And again, the reason I use masking instead of an eraser tool to erase all the boundaries I don't want is so that it's non-destructive. So again, I use my brush tool with black as the foreground color on my mask, so I don't want to have the image selected. I want to make sure I have the mask. And then I just erase where I don't want. You can also select the area you want, so pretty easily just drag around. I kind of like their ripples and I like their reflections, but I don't want all the extra. I'm going to select a mask so I can see a preview of my mask, again making sure that you're on overlay mode so you can see what you're doing, and then just feather that edge to make it more of a clean, smooth transition. Okay, so now I'm on my mask. I want to hide what's outside the marching ants, so I have to go to Select Inverse and then Option Delete. So it's going to fill that, whatever I had selected, with black, which happened to be everything other than the duck butts. Okay, so I could add a blending mode on these and see what they do. So here's the darken blending mode, but unfortunately it uses the ducks and the water to blend in, which is probably not what I want. Overlay looks pretty good on the water, but I might have to actually select the duck butts. Oh, soft light looked pretty good. Maybe vivid light. Okay, so I'm going to select the duck butts from this layer, and let's see how well Photoshop does it with some of its automate tools. So, or not automate, with some of its AI. So I'm going to click on the quick selection, hit select subject on that duck layer, and let's see what it selects. So it found the ducks. It also has a little bit of the reflection, which I don't want. So I'm going to zoom in there, going to edit this selection, and I'm going to subtract and just kind of paint what I don't want to take it away. Whoops, went too much. Command Z. So this might be a task for the lasso tool. I'm going to subtract from selection and just try and freehand it. It does not have to be perfect because we're going to feather this edge a little bit. Okay, so I got rid of that part. Let's get rid of this because I don't want my ducks blending in. I want them to stand out. I have this, whoops, let me get all of that. Back to the beginning, get rid of this part. So you can see how the lasso tool can be handy for doing freeform selections. Okay, so let's see what we have when we do select and mask. We missed a part. Maybe I'll like drag this along the edge and see if Photoshop can find it. This is also an AI option here. And this is only with certain versions of Photoshop, so depending on what version you have, it may work better or worse. I don't know why they ever get rid of this, because this is super handy for doing more complex edges. This is not a very complex edge, but it'll make it look more seamless when it's kind of blending in. Okay, here we go. Then up here it can be a little bit more precise. Okay, so now that I have a very complex selection here of my duck butts, I'm going to hit Command C, Command V, and there they are above the layer with their reflections. So this is their reflection and ripples, and I might even hide more of that. So this is just like a back and forth type of a game until it looks like the best version of those three images put together. Okay, so there's my duck butts, my pond, and my lovely model whose dress is getting all wet.